Welcome back, everyone. I woke up today with a question related to the Garden of Eden. How tall was Adam? If you're like me, whenever you have a question, you'll frequently turn to the Hadith for some remarkable answers. Personally, I would be completely lost without them. Without Muhammad's words being preserved in these sources, I wouldn't know that a child resembles whatever parent discharges first. I wouldn't know about adult breastfeeding. I wouldn't know about Satan's sorcery, tying knots in our hair while we sleep. Without Muhammad's sayings, I never would have known women are the majority in hell because they're intellectually deficient. I wouldn't know that Muhammad was strong enough to sleep with all of his wives in one night, dirty enough to do it with one bath, or weak enough to be overpowered by a Jew and a magical hairbrush. So yes, when I have a question, I frequently turn to the Hadith for some remarkable answers. And numerous authentic Hadith, which means you can absolutely believe them, as millions of Muslims have for centuries, tell us that Adam was very tall. In this case, he was about 60 cubits tall. Now, these sorts of old measurements are always a little tricky, so 60 cubits could be 90 feet tall, or it could be a lot more. Regardless, Muhammad said he was really tall. But people aren't that tall today, so what happened? Well, Muhammad has an answer to that too. Adam was that tall, but people have been getting shorter ever since. That makes perfect sense. But then apparently at some point, people stopped getting shorter, or maybe were getting shorter way more slowly. So for more clarification, I turned, as troubled Muslims often do, to other sites like Islam QA, because I'm not a scholar and I should consult with Muslim scholars. After all, there's no better place to get unbiased truth than Muslim academics. Not surprisingly, Muslims have asked questions about Adam's extreme height, according to Muhammad. What I found interesting was a summary of the response. A Muslim is obliged to believe in every idea for which there is evidence in the Quran or the Sunnah. Of course, such statements smack of the sort of requirements in Sharia law about what Muslims must believe in order to not be apostates. In the case of Adam's height, however, Muslims are required to believe in Jewish legends, which is where most of this started. So how did Adam get so big? As far as we can tell, during the middle to latter part of the Second Temple period, which ended in 70 AD, there was a common tradition that a heavenly man preceded Adam in creation. Through some creative wordplay in Greek and Hebrew, this colossal cosmic luminous being, allegedly created in Genesis 1:3, became sort of an agent of creation through the rest of the story. And when it was time to create Adam in the image of God, perhaps the luminous man was that image Adam was created in. Adam, then too, was large and luminous. Centuries of speculation interacted with these legends, and other traditions grew out of them, as one would expect. For example, the large and luminous Adam was venerated by the angels in pre-Islamic sources, which greatly influenced the authors of the Quran, since it retells this account over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So the origins of these legends are somewhat complicated, or perhaps just bizarre, but the traditions are certainly widespread and influential, weaving through esoteric Jewish and Christian texts, Gnostic sources, and of course, Islamic texts, like the Hadith and Quran. But for now, let's remember two basic points. Adam was really big, and he was luminous. But he couldn't have stayed that way, right? Let's look at a couple of examples of how these traditions develop through some pre-Islamic texts. A Jewish commentary on Genesis, which was compiled in the 5th century AD, says simply that Adam was situated from one end of the world to the other. But as we've alluded to, his enormous size was not to last. Later, the commentary tells the common tale that, after Adam sinned, he lost his radiance and his stature. Listen to another source, the Talmud, as it tells this now familiar story. The first Adam was from earth to the firmament, quoting Deuteronomy 4:32, but when he went sour, interesting translation, the Holy One, blessed be he, put his hand on him and cut him down to size, and then quoting Psalm 89 as proof. While many exegetes were content with an astronomically large Adam, others preferred a more moderate, precise estimate. Echoing something much closer to what we find placed on the lips of Muhammad in the Hadith, Rabbi Meir of the 2nd century said 200 cubits was twice the height of the first man, making Adam 100 cubits. So Adam was huge and luminous until he lost it. This is where we may find more evidence of the influence of these sorts of traditions on the Quran. Surah 722 says that the first humans covered themselves with heavenly clothing, leaves from paradise. It's important to recall that in the Quran, the Garden of Eden is actually in heaven, not on earth. So this clothing of paradise would have been very special. But verse 27 of the same chapter is puzzling. The human pair was driven out of the garden, stripped of clothing. As is frequently the case, this Quranic detail does not follow the biblical text, but it does become more intelligible against the backdrop of these traditions that we've been following. If, of course, the clothing they're stripped of is a garbled reference to the popular legend where Adam was stripped of his heavenly clothing when he sinned, summarized nicely as we've seen from the Jewish commentary on Genesis. These sacred texts containing Muhammad's words and actions have not weathered criticism well over the last several decades. But the vast majority of Muslims believe the Hadith, or at least profess to, because they're required to. The Quran is even more theologically problematic, since the influence of pre-Islamic legends is pervasive and demonstrably obvious. We can trace these legends to their origins. We can see the esoteric exegesis that produced Adam the giant in the Hadith, or the angel's prostration in the Quran, just to name a few of many examples. And we must persist with these questions to our Muslim friends. Why do the words of Muhammad and the word of Allah look so much like pre-Islamic legends? So what do you think, Muslims? Was Adam a giant? Let me know in the comments section. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.